Let's talk football. All right, welcome to Let's Talk Football, episode 5. We're at college football week 2 behind us.
Week 2 behind us.
Week 2 behind us. A few things that kind of stood out to me is it really looks like the state of Florida, outside of UCF, is lacking good football.
I mean, you look at Florida State after their week 1 disaster loss to Virginia Tech. They go out and had a hard time with Samford out of the FCS. I mean, Samford, who dominated most of the game, Florida State was able to pull a 10-point victory over them, 36-26. The Florida Gators lost to Kentucky for the first time in over 30 years. Kentucky broke the streak, and Kentucky's off to a hot 2-0 start. But most importantly, they're off to a strong 1-0 start in the SEC play.
Kentucky 1-0 in the SEC with a win over Florida. That's not exactly something you would have initially thought you would hear.
It's weird.
It goes to show that Dan Mullen has a little bit of work to do.
Well, I mean, this is his first season with Florida. This is a very, he came into a very wounded Florida team, and, they're in a rebuilding process. So we're not going to see, instant improvement right off the bat. Dan Mullen's a pretty good head coach, but he has a team to deal with, and this is a team that has a lot to work on.
Georgia, very strong performance against South Carolina.
Which that was supposed to be my upset alert, and
I think a lot of people had that on, but did you upset alert?
I mean, because South Carolina has improved immensely behind Will Muschamp over the past couple of seasons, especially with Jake Bentley at quarterback. I mean, I figured that South Carolina was going to give them a game, but that wasn't the case.
Chip Kelly had his first big test in his return against Oklahoma, and I remember also a lot of people saying, well, can the Bruins hang with Oklahoma? No.
UCLA has a lot of work to do, and of course they're kind of reeling over the loss of Josh Rosen to the NFL draft. Josh Rosen was a guy who kept them competitive in a lot of games, but UCLA has a lot more work on than I thought. UCLA, I mean, honestly, there should be no reason why they lost to Cincinnati last weekend, week 1. And of course, I mean, I knew Oklahoma was going to pour it on UCLA. Kyler Murray is an amazing quarterback. Kyler Murray is he's unbelievable. And not only that, he's very athletic. He was a first round draft pick in the MLB draft, but he chose to not go and spend this season at Oklahoma. I mean, Kyler Murray is, what else to say about him? Michigan with a strong bounce-back performance against Western Michigan, 49-3.
It's Western Michigan.
But I'm just saying, I like Michigan, though. And I like Shea Patterson.
So, what are we to take from USC in their loss to Stanford? It's not surprising that they lost to Stanford, but at the same time, held to 3 points. I mean, a field goal. This is the Trojans, right?
Well, I mean, USC, their offense is in a rebuilding stage. They lost Sam Darnold, they lost Ronald Jones, and so I mean, they were big parts of their offense last season, and so they're in a rebuilding stage offensively. It's kind of like they got to start from scratch. Sam Darnold being a big part of their offense last season. Going against Stanford, who still has Bryce Love at running back, who is a Heisman favorite. Honestly, my front runner for Heisman this year is Will Grier, quarterback of West Virginia, who had a super performance against Tennessee in week 1.
Right, and close one in College Station.
Clemson and Texas A&M, in which honestly I thought it was going to be more of a deficit. I mean, in my opinion, I had Clemson winning by 2 touchdowns, honestly. Because I felt that Texas A&M was going to give them a competition. They were going to give them a game. But ultimately, I thought Clemson was just going to overpower them behind Dabo Swinney and Kelly Bryant at quarterback. But having Jimbo Fisher, he knows Dabo's tendencies. He's coached against him enough to know how to play against him and know how to outcoach him. But, of course, Texas A&M has some rebuilding to do. They got a young squad. But honestly, I feel that Texas A&M is way ahead of schedule if you ask me, I feel that Texas A&M is way ahead of schedule, and we could see them as possible contenders in the SEC sooner than later, sooner than we all thought. I mean, Texas A&M, they came within 2 points, and honestly, Texas A&M got robbed one play. It was a pass from Kellen Mond to one of his receivers and fumbled, and the ball went out of bounds, and the referee ruled it a touchback, which honestly I felt that was a bad call. And so Texas A&M, they know what they got to improve on. They went up again. They stood toe to toe with the number 2 team in the country, and so I feel they're way ahead of schedule.
They do look like. I did think Jimbo Fisher would definitely take Texas A&M to the next level at some point, but it looks like sooner than later. Maybe.
But we're going to see how good Jimbo is coaching in the SEC. So it's still a little early to tell.
I was a bit surprised with Ball State actually scoring 10 points late against Notre Dame. This is a team that just got put into the top 10, and of course, you know, the Notre Dame bandwagoners like to get behind Notre Dame anytime they actually touch the ball. So,
and it really surprised me that Ball State actually came within less than 10 points of beating Notre Dame. And actually, I thought Notre Dame was going to start a period of some dominance, you know, after defensively dominating Michigan. I mean, they completely dominated Michigan on the defensive side of the ball last week, and I figured they were just going to pour it on Ball State. So Notre Dame has still a lot more to work on.
And then, of course, there was the Arizona pulling off the upset of Michigan State. Herm Edwards.
And like I said, don't sleep on Herm Edwards. Do not sleep on him. The guy knows what he can do. He's a coach in the NFL. He's a coach professionally. And Herm Edwards knows what it takes to win. He knows what it takes to be successful. And a lot of people sleeping on him. Some people think he might be a bust, but I'm just like, I mean, Arizona State, they got a lot of talented guys on their football team. They have a really talented quarterback. Wilkins is super impressive. And I knew Arizona State was going to make some noise. Now, will they be a type of team that can contend in the Pac-12? Possibly not. I mean, you got to deal with teams like Stanford, Washington, Oregon behind Justin Herbert, who's a pretty good quarterback. And, you know, not only that, you also got to deal with USC. But, I mean, who's to say that USC might not take a couple steps back this season?
Yeah, that is. I did have to ask that question when you lose a quarterback like Sam Darnold. Are they going to just reload, or are they going to have to take a step back? It looks like they're going to take a step.
Most likely. So USC might, you know, and of course Arizona has really took a step back, losing to BYU first game of the season, and then getting blown out by Houston this past weekend, you know, on the road. And so behind Kevin Sumlin, his campaign out there with the Arizona Wildcats is not off to a good start at all. And Chip Kelly losing to Cincinnati and then getting blown out by Oklahoma on the road. Granted, you're going against a tough Oklahoma team.
Well, I think it's going to take Chip Kelly a year or two to really establish his brand of football at UCLA.
You know, because he has to, you know, kind of give his team time to buy into what he's trying to bring to.
Because he likes to use the he ran the option at Oregon all the time. So first season at UCLA, I don't really see him bringing all his entire playbook out right off the bat. He needs to go find some like a quarterback that can run his type of offense for one. I don't know if he was able to do that his first year, but yeah, and Michigan's another team. I mean, you could sit there and say that they rebounded against Western Michigan all you want, but still, it's until they can start pulling out the stops against quality opponents.
Like Penn State, Ohio State, Wisconsin.
But it's some tough defenses there that are obviously in their conference.
We're not gonna really like say make decisions about teams, about whether they're going to take a step back or whether they've improved. They're going to go ahead and, make that steps up until they get into conference play. Conference is where you're going to really start seeing teams' weaknesses. You're going to start seeing their strengths. You're going to start seeing, where you see the line in the sand.
Yeah. Okay. Let's make a transition to the NFL. Thursday night football, Atlanta, Philadelphia. Bit of a snoozer.
Repeat of the NFC divisional round. The game is won with a defensive stop in the end zone.
It was almost a carbon copy finish. It came down to Atlanta trailing by less than a touchdown, but needing more than a field goal to win. And then Matt Ryan missing Julio Jones in the end zone. Instead of going to the right, this time they went to the left. And I don't know.
And not only that, there was like a total of maybe a 5-point difference from last season. I mean, the NFC divisional round ended with a 15-10 victory with Philadelphia winning the game, and now it's 18-12 in this one. I mean, it just goes to show now that Atlanta had a big loss. They lost Keanu Neal for the rest of the season due to a torn ACL, who he plays a major role in that Falcons secondary along with Robert Alford and Trufant. So, I mean, ain't no telling how the Falcons are going to shift gears or readjust from that. But the Eagles still show that they have one of the strongest defenses in the league. So,
yeah. I don't know. And then they run Philly Special 2.0. I mean, you have one job, Atlanta. One job. Literally, the only time that they have run that play previously is on his biggest stage.
In the Super Bowl. But the difference that I saw was that now in the Super Bowl, Nick Foles, you know how when the quarterback is trying to, do an audible and trying to kind of reach out to his offensive lineman, he kind of walks around the line and, he kind of takes steps up and goes towards like his guards and his tackles. But what caught Atlanta was that, Nick Foles was back there the whole time, behind center. And it ran kind of different because last year it was the running back that, received the snap from the center. This time it was Nick Foles, and so this was where Atlanta was not expecting it. And so it's where with the Philly special it's supposed to be, you can't really see it coming. That's the kind of object of the Philly special. You can't really see it coming. And I saw some differences between last year's Philly special and this season's Philly special. Of course, this not gonna be the last time Eagles gonna run it. Let's just say that.
No, especially if Foles on the field when you don't really know what you're going to get.
And you can bet they're going to have Carson Wentz probably run that play as well. And so definitely it's going to be a play that no one's going to see coming.
So you get to Sunday and have a few arguably duds. Let's talk Buffalo.
Oh, poor Nathan Peterman. Oh, poor guy left off from where he had last season. Throwing 5 picks against the LA Chargers, no biggie. Then goes out and throws 5 for 18, 24 yards, and 2 picks, I believe. And then they had to put Josh Allen in the second half. Joe Flacco had one of his most impressive performances. The Ravens look strong. I'm not going to really talk about the Bills. The Ravens look strong, and they can be a possible contender. I mean, I don't want to say they can be a possible contender in AFC because the season's just young, but the Ravens look poised for a resurgence from looking at that game.
Yeah, I mean, game one, I'm not ready to make any judgments after 1 week. It was against the Bills, who, on one hand, they got a strong defense. On the other hand, they obviously don't have a quarterback at this point. Josh Allen, he did not impress, but, he's a rookie.
He was thrown in the second half. Ben
Roethlisberger wants to sit there and say that the Steelers are not one guy, which I would agree with. But then they come out and tie the Browns in overtime.
The Browns were able to snap their losing streak. Not with a win, but with a tie.
Which is funny.
Which, I mean, it's funny. I mean, you don't see ties often.
I mean, the Steelers were still able to effectively run the ball.
I mean, now, some things to take away from that game. Now, as you know, Le'Veon Bell was franchise tagged, and him and his agent been trying to work out a long-term deal, which the Steelers have not budged. And Le'Veon Bell was still a no-show. He missed out on his $850,000 game check. Now, look, if a game check is worth $850,000, let me play one game. I'll suit up. You know, I can knock out all my student loans. I can pay off my car. I can pay off all my debts, and I could be set for a long time. But I digress. But some things to take away from the game, and you know how on ESPN they post a game recap under the score. So the headline was Browns don't lose, tie Steelers 21-21 in sloppy game, and the story was this: well, the Browns didn't lose. That was it. Usually it'd be a long outdrawn story, but some things to take away was that the Browns defense forced 6 turnovers in that game. They picked off Big Ben 3 times, and you would think, with Le'Veon Bell holding out, they would need, this would be a big loss for them. Well, their second string running back, James Conner, out of Pitt, had 31 carries for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. So do you really think the Browns do you think they necessarily need Le'Veon Bell? By looking at James Conner, probably not. And Juju Smith-Schuster, who was their second round prospect, their second round draft pick out of USC in the 2017 draft, had 5 receptions for 119 yards. Jarvis Landry, his debut with the Browns, 7 catches for 106 yards. And so, I mean, of course, Steelers are going, they might take a step or 2 back, maybe. They'll still be a formidable team in the AFC, but there's improvement as far as the Browns. Tyrod Taylor still leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, he only went 15 for 40, 197 yards, a TD and an interception. Of course, his precision, he needs to work on how precise he can be, but he did show his versatility as he went for 8 carries, 77 yards, and a touchdown, which he was the leading rusher for the Browns in that game. So,
yeah, I mean, there wasn't too much as far as like big surprises for Week 1. We did get to see for our first real look at Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes was actually pretty impressive in his game. His first, I believe it was his first start.
Yeah, first start against the Chargers.
I mean, 38-28. Good way to start off the Patrick Mahomes era in Kansas City. He was 15 for 27, 256 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And as you can see, his favorite target is Tyreek Hill. 7 catches, 169 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So you look at it, half of Mahomes' completions were to Tyreek Hill. And out of the 256 passing yards, 169 of them went to Tyreek Hill.
Right.
So you're going to see a strong connection between him and Hill. Of course, Phillip Rivers, he never ceases to amaze me. 34 for 51, 424 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Keenan Allen 8 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown. So, I mean, we definitely see the strength of offense as far as LA is concerned.
Gordon rushed him for 102 yards. Didn't score a touchdown, but had 11.3 rush average.
It says Melvin Gordon had 102 yards receiving. He had 64 yards rushing. But still, I mean, Melvin Gordon garnered quite a bit of fantasy points this past weekend.
You gotta like it for fantasy football fans. Always wanting their players to do well, but their teams to lose. But I don't know. So what did you think of Sam Darnold?
Sam Darnold, his very first pass was a pick 6, and I'm just like, oh Lord. This might not be good for Sam Darnold. But he was able to settle down. He was able to calm down quite a bit. Jets won 48-17, pummeling the Lions in the season opener. Sam Darnold was 16 for 21, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick, which was the pick 6 in his very first pass. Other than the pick 6, Sam Darnold was pretty good. I mean, what I liked about him is his ability to move around the pocket. You know, his mobility in the pocket and being able to extend the play. And also, you have some key supporting cast like Isaiah Crowell. His first game with the Jets, 10 carries, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, and not only that, the defense forced 5 turnovers. I mean, they picked off Matthew Stafford 4 times. And so you look at the Jets, I mean, they play like this every week. The Jets can be a team to look out for in the AFC. I mean, like you said, the Jets is a team that's going to depend on defense. A core that can take pressure off the offense, especially being led by a rookie quarterback. We also got to look at Isaiah Crowell, who's an NFL veteran, who's been in the league for quite a few years now. I mean, going for 102 yards. I mean, he averaged 10 yards a carry in last night's game. So, I mean, the Jets. This is a team that can make some noise in the AFC.
So here's a question I have to ask: you think the Raiders are going to end up missing Khalil Mack?
Oh, for sure. I mean, let's take a look at what Khalil Mack did on Sunday Night Football against Green Bay. I mean, he had a forced fumble and a fumble recovery, and he also had a pick 6 in his debut against the Green Bay Packers. Now, granted, Aaron Rodgers had gotten hurt and had to come back in the second half to lead the Packers back. But still, Khalil Mack, I mean, you look at he held out the whole offseason because the Raiders were so stubborn into trying to give him a long-term deal. Well, I wonder why you couldn't give him that long-term deal. Oh, wait. You want to get a guy back into coaching, 10 years, $100 million. No wonder why you wasn't able to give him that long-term deal that he deserved. Because you want to get a guy who's been out of coaching for 15, 16 years. How many years? 10, 11 years? I mean, when was the last time John Green coached before last night? When was the last time? 2008?
It was, 10 years. He's been out for 10 years.
So you want to get a guy who hasn't coached in so many years, and you want to give him 10 years for $100 million. No wonder why he wasn't able to give Khalil Mack that sort of deal.
What did you think about Adrian Peterson's performance against his old team for like 9 games or something?
Washington was a team that really impressed me in week 1. As far as with Alex Smith at quarterback, Alex Smith, great first performance, 21 for 30, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's no surprise considering that's Alex Smith. And also Adrian Peterson, I think he's found his new home. I think he's found a place where he's finally comfortable in. He had 26 carries for 96 yards. And not only that, Washington had 429 yards of total offense. Their defense held Arizona to only 213 yards of total offense. Sam Bradford going 20 of 34 for 153 yards and an interception. They held their franchise running back to, I believe, 9 carries for 37 yards. Number 31, David Johnson, who had just signed an extension, to only 9 carries for 37 yards. And Washington, that's a team that I feel can probably compete in the NFC East. And like I said, my order of march in the NFC East would be Philadelphia Eagles coming in at 1, just due to how strong they are, especially when Carson Wentz comes back. Redskins, and I'm going to say Giants and Cowboys.
Yeah, the Cowboys did not look very impressive at all.
They lost 16-8 against Carolina, first game of the season, which I feel it was kind of a sloppy game. Both teams were held under 300 yards of total offense. But other than that, I feel that the game was kind of evenly matched. Dallas had 17 first downs, Carolina had 20, and both teams they were only separated by maybe a minute and 12 in time of possession.
Yeah, and now we can officially say that Jimmy Garoppolo has lost a game.
Yes. Now, I'm not going to really get on him too much because they lost to a really good Minnesota Vikings team. Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, he struggled big time in his, in the first game of the season. 15 for 33, 261 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 picks. Knowing that, they lost Jerry McKinnon, so they have to go to Matt Breida at running back. On the other hand, knowing that they had 4 turnovers. Now, on the other hand, look at Kirk Cousins, his debut, much anticipated debut with the Minnesota Vikings. 20 for 36, 244 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Adam Thielen, 6 catches, 102 yards.
The last new quarterback that we were looking to see was Case Keenum in Denver, which not too bad.
Not too bad, actually. I mean, they were able to get a big win over Seattle, who's in a rebuilding process. He needs to work on, maintaining possession of the ball. He needs to work on not turning the ball over. He threw 3 picks against Seattle. But other than that, he was 25 for 39 and 329 yards. Emmanuel Sanders, 10 catches, 135 yards. I feel that's going to be a pretty good connection. A pretty good 3-man tandem. Case Keenum, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. So, that Von Miller was a man possessed. I mean, he had a fumble recovery. He also had 7 total tackles. Von Miller also had 3 sacks and 2 tackles for losses, and he was able to get to Russell Wilson 4 times in that game. It's Von Miller. He's one of the most dominant defensive ends in the league, so what do you expect?
So, overall, very productive first week in my mind. We got to see some new teams, or I guess new players on new teams. Got our first look at some returning players. Next week we get matchups. Looks like we have some key divisional playoffs.
Divisional matchups. Like Carolina versus Atlanta. That's going to be a pretty good game.
Could decide a wild card.
Possibly.
I definitely see that as potentially deciding at least one of the wild cards. Depending on what the other team in the division ends up doing. Quite honestly, I don't want to mention their name right now.
We got some pretty big games. Minnesota and Green Bay going to go at it this weekend in Lambeau.
Okay, yeah.
That's going to be a game to watch out for. It's going to be NFC North matchup between 2 teams that obviously do not like each other.
We'll see what Aaron Rodgers does this time. Does he, go straight at Barr, or does he try to avoid him?
I would try to avoid him. Unless he wants a repeat of that post-game interview he had after the Bears game. Dude looked completely zoned. I don't know what the team doctors had him on, but he had him on some good stuff though. Had him on something good.
It was a tackle by Anthony Barr last year that
broke his collarbone. And honestly, they brought back Aaron Rodgers a little too early because they tried bringing him back versus Carolina, but didn't really work out that well. But some more divisional matchups. Arizona takes the road to go to LA to go against the Rams team that looks very strong.
Arizona does not look impressive at all.
Well, honestly, you want to give Sam Bradford maybe a game or 2, but I think it's time we start trying to work out Josh Rosen. Oakland and Denver going to go at it. I feel that's going to be a pretty good game. New England and Jacksonville going to go at it this weekend. Rematch of the AFC Championship game.
I was just about to say repeat.
But this time, instead of Foxborough, we're going to be out in Jacksonville, Florida.
That should be interesting. And they should have the spotlight to themselves. It's like one of them anyway. It's like a late afternoon game.
Also, the Saints will be taking on the Browns in the Dome. They're going to try to avoid a 4th straight 0-2 start to the season. The Saints are a 9-point favorite in this game. The Saints, they had a hard time stopping the pass and stopping the run. Peyton Barber had 19 carries for 69 yards. And not only that, Ryan Fitzpatrick had, 10 carries, and he even beat Alvin Kamara in rushing. But, and not only that, Ryan Fitzpatrick had some quality rushing yards in that game. And he's not a dual threat. He's more of a balance / pocket guy. Tyrod Taylor is a dual threat quarterback. And he's a lot faster than Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he's a lot more elusive. And he adds that dimension to that Browns offense along with Carlos Hyde and along with Jarvis Landry. So the Saints need to really be on their toes, because if they don't get something together quick, fast, in a hurry, the Browns will come into the Dome and embarrass the Saints. And I'm going to be even more salty. And I'm going to go on a bigger tangent, to the point to where me and John might have to do a podcast at the Saints facility in Metairie. I'm just playing with you. That would be kind of fun though, but I don't want us getting jumped by the whole Saints franchise. Saints has been my team; they'll always be my team. Okay, And I just hate to see my team doing bad because I love the Saints. Look, I mean, I don't care how good the Saints do this season. I don't care how bad they do this season. I will always rock who that.
Yeah. Okay. So we 2 weeks into college, 1 week into the pros, and I don't know. The season looks like it could be an interesting one.
Well, at this point, it's more of only time will tell. I mean, as far as college, once we get into about week 5, week 6, we start weeding the men from the boys. We start weeding out the strong from the weak. In the pros, around week 6, week 7 is when we really start seeing what teams are capable of. Right now, we're in first couple weeks is for a chance for teams to really weed themselves out. This is still around time NFL teams are still making adjustments to their game plans. And so, I mean, nothing is really perfected and nothing is really set in stone yet as far as the game planning is concerned.
Right. Okay, well, that concludes another week of Let's Talk Football. I am your host, John Barons.
And I'm Joshua Perkins.
I will see you next week. Check us out on Twitter at AI Sports 3. We're on Facebook at AI Sports Network, and we have our own personal website, aisportsnetwork.com.
Comment, like, and share.
Let's talk football.